What a headshot! What a head!
How's it, guys? This is Dayvy, FPL, and welcome back to the Fantasy Premier League video here on my channel. Now in this video, I'll be taking you through the best draft you can buy in FPL. Now you can probably put best in inverted commas, as FPL is quite an opinionated game. My best might be different to your best, and that's why I've actually eliminated all the opinions. So this is going to be the best draft that you guys can have for Game Week 1 based on points. So I'll explain shortly how I actually made this draft, but before that I just want to clarify that yes, I know I've interrupted positional review week by 2 days. Today was meant to be the midfielders. I've already gone over the goalkeepers and defenders, but I wanted to interrupt the schedule to drop this team as I think it might be quite important. So it seems like I can't stick to a video schedule this preseason. Saturday was meant to be an off day. I uploaded my latest draft. Now I'm interrupting positional review week, but don't worry, today's still going to be an absolute banger. Now I'll be dropping the midfielder review tomorrow and then the forward review the day after that. So make sure those bell notifications are turned on, you don't want to miss out. But if you guys are interested to see how I actually made this best draft, sit back, relax, and let's get straight into it. Now you guys might remember I released this video over the preseason last season, but I'm only calculating the best team based on last year's points. Now the first thing that you're probably asking is that how can we kind of use last season's points to predict this season's points? And I would agree with you that not every player is going to perform as well as they did last season, but maybe some perform better. It is one of the metrics that we use to kind of measure how consistent a player is. You would hope that they perform to a similar level as they did last season, and FPL incorporates that into the pricing. So you would have seen that your more kind of reliable premium options, such as a Mo Salah, their price does increase as they are more consistent. So let's assume every player that you guys are going to see on screen is just consistent at the end of the day. Now what I then have done is I've run this through kind of a Python optimization. This is going to spit out a starting 11 and a bench that will score the most points for this upcoming season based on this season's price points. Now I absolutely love doing these videos because it changes your kind of thinking. It shows you players you haven't even thought about, and even team structures that you haven't even thought about. And this team really sets up nicely with how kind of the pricing is of FPL at the moment. So if you guys do enjoy this draft, comment down below if you think you can improve it. But there's no money in the bank to actually do that, so you might have to switch some players around. Now I mentioned this as an optimization problem, and therefore you need some constraints. The first constraint is going to be the bench, and I've hard coded this to be 17 million. Now the other constraints rely on the FPL rules. The first one is going to be kind of the teams, only 3 players from a respective team, and then all the constraints are on the positions such as formation. Now you guys will see the winning formation is going to be the 3-5-2, which makes sense as the midfield packs so much value, and therefore the bench has 2 defenders and 1 forward. So you guys can even go cheaper on the bench if you wanted to. You can drop the 4.5 defender to a 4.0, but at least here we have some bench coverage. Now I'm not going to kind of put the bench players because the way I kind of did this problem is I didn't solve for the bench. This is simply just the starting 11. So let's go through the team OG style from goalkeeper to the last forward, detailing which players have made the draft. Now the first player is going to be a little bit of an increase in budget in terms of the goalkeeper position. It's Pickford at 5.0 million. Now this would have made sense if you guys have kind of watched my price point videos or my pricing mistakes videos, as he scored the most points from the goalkeeper position. Now there wasn't really a standout 4.5 at the end of the day. All the ones that stood out have been increased to 5.0, which is of course Pickford. So could Pickford still provide good value at this price point? I usually like going for a 4.5 goalkeeper, but if you guys don't mind spending a bit of money on a more premium goalkeeper, Pickford's definitely the one to look at. Now what you guys can do is test your knowledge of last season, try and predict which players are going to pop up in this team. You've probably worked out 1 or 2 Arsenal defenders will be in it. That's exactly right, the first defender, Benjamin White, at 6.5 million. That increased attacking threat has caused him a little bit of a price rise. Now he's accompanied by his colleague Saliba, who also scored more points than Gabriel, so it makes sense why he's going to be here. And this just shows the fact that Arsenal defense was so good last season. We spoke about how many people at the moment do have an Arsenal defender in the template draft, so make sure that you guys maybe have one. Now the lovely thing about those Arsenal assets is the rotation was not there under Arteta. That back four was pretty solid throughout the season. In the last 4.5, I've mentioned him throughout many of my drafts, my favorite 4.5 at the moment, and that's Anderson from Crystal Palace. Now there's been talks of potentially Gay leaving the club if that happens, that Crystal Palace defense does get worse, but let's see what happens with 4.5 Anderson. Now he was great value at the end of the day last season. This season could potentially be the same. My first choice of a 4.5 defender. So the defensive department looks pretty kind of settled. I would probably downgrade Pickford to a 4.5, get an extra 0.5 in the bank. Might swap out Ben White for someone like a Guardiola for an extra 0.1. And I'll speak about that upgrade later in the video. So the defense, pretty kind of set, pretty kind of boring to be honest, but the midfield looks absolutely stacked. We're going to start off with our captain, Cole Palmer. So yes, Cole Palmer is going to be our captain for this specific draft, and the reason for that, he scored the most points last season with 244. Now the one common theme I've seen over this kind of preseason is Cole Palmer worth it because you won't captain him? But is that reason just because we don't want to? I mean, at the end of the day, he scored the most points last Premier League season. If you captained him, you would have absolutely reaped the rewards, and therefore he's an absolute campsy option. Now over on FPL Twitter, I've rarely seen Cole Palmer in many people's drafts, but from Game Week 2 onwards, the sea of green for Chelsea is ridiculous. But maybe you're like myself trying to convince that Nkunku could cover Cole Palmer, but I don't really think that's what's going to happen at the end of the day. So once again, Cole Palmer our captain because he scored the most points last Premier League season, and should we actually captain him more in FPL? Now the second player is going to be Bukayo Saka from Arsenal, and you guys might have worked out by now, no Mo Salah in this team. That downgrade has allowed us to upgrade the midfield and the forwards. So Saka could be on track for another massive Premier League season and FPL season, depending on how Arsenal set up. I do like Saka though. I was actually willing to play his price tag if I do downgrade Mo Salah. The Arsenal fixtures though are a little bit hit or miss at the start. But what downgrading Mo Salah allows you to do is afford Cole Palmer and Saka, and we've also managed to fit in Phil Foden at 9.5 million. So common trend here, all the highest scoring midfielders from last season are going to be here, and because they come in cheaper than Mo Salah, they're worth better value. But once again, Mo Salah, that expensive price tag is down to consistency, so all these three players are on for a massive price rise if they do it again this season. But with Phil Foden, just monitor the situation with preseason. Pep earlier said that he might not kind of integrate these players as early as people are expecting, and the last thing you want is for Phil Foden to be benched in Game Week 1. Not the worst thing in the world, probably Game Week 2 against Ipswich at home, that's the game that you want him for, but Phil Foden had a great last season. Now going into our more mid-range kind of midfielders, the first player Anthony Gordon, a very popular kind of template midfielder, and Newcastle are great on the attack. So nice to see that Anthony Gordon is here after last season. Haven't really thought of him as the most consistent returner, but this does change my mind. For my own team, I'm deciding between kind of going for Eze or going for Gordon, and this might just cement Gordon in my draft. Now the last player is someone that's going under the radar, but I can understand why. The West Ham fixtures unfortunately are simply terrible, and that's Jared Bowen at 7.5 million. So maybe if West Ham had better fixtures, we would see him in more people's drafts, but once again, another very consistent option that I think has been maybe underpriced. But I've seen him in hardly any people's drafts, and I can understand why, but West Ham have been doing great business in the transfer window. But this midfield department looks absolutely stacked, and if this was my team, I think I would be quite excited. And the biggest question mark about the forward department is Erling Haaland in this team, and the answer is no. Our most expensive forward is Ollie Watkins. Now Watkins outperformed Haaland last season. He just had an absolutely stellar season, and I guess Erling Haaland was injured for a bit. But Ollie Watkins provides better value in terms of last year's points with that 9.0 price tag. Now he's a very polarizing player. I included him on my last draft. Not many people actually liked it, to be honest. Even though his ownership is quite high amongst the FPL community, might not be the most favored player. But if he can replicate last year's numbers, he's an absolute steal at 9.0. Now without Erling Haaland in this draft, I guess the algorithm knows that you want to cover Haaland, and therefore Alvarez is our second forward. Now 9.0 million actually had a pretty decent season considering that he might have been second choice, but there's a big transfer rumor that he might be leaving Man City this season. So what I would probably do is, if you guys remember, downgrading my defensive department gave me an extra 1.0, maybe taking Bowen to something like an Eze gives you an extra 1.5, and then Alvarez becomes Isaac. But I guess if Alvarez does stay at Man City, maybe he wants more game time, and at 7.0, if he does play more minutes, he's also a great deal. But as mentioned, just imagine if Isaac was here instead of Alvarez, how stacked this team would look at the end of the day. You can't tell me that doesn't make you a little bit excited. And that's kind of what I was talking about in terms of the price points. Is there a draft without Mo Salah and Haaland that actually looks pretty good? This might tempt you slightly. But I guess it does come down to the Campsy debate. Would you captain Palmer, Saka, Foden, or even Ollie Watkins over someone like a Salah or Haaland? When you do see the actual points these players scored last season, it's absolutely outstanding, And that's what I was kind of talking about with Cole Palmer. Should we actually captain him more? We always say that Mo Salah and Erling Haaland are better campsy options, but maybe that's just what we tell ourselves. These first three midfielders could be perfectly viable options. So I don't know what you guys think about this draft. You might absolutely hate it, you might love it. Once again, this is the best draft that you can buy based on last year's points and this season's prices. You guys can fill in the benches and do moves like I did. Downgrading Pickford, Ben White, and Bowen to Eze gives you enough for Alvarez to Isaac, and then this draft looks even better. So I might put this in the back of my mind for the next week or so because this might be too tempting, but you guys let me know what you guys think. But this is basically going to wrap up the video, guys. Hope you guys did enjoy it. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. As mentioned, midfielder review tomorrow and then the forwards the day after. Make sure those notifications are on so you guys don't miss out. But for the time being, I'm signing off. It's been Dayvy FPL and I'm out. Cheers, bye.